The golden age of Japanese cinema, which took place roughly from 1951 to 1960, is defined by its lack of definition. The greatest directors in Japan, many of whom had been working for decades, managed to reach their respective artistic peak within the same decade, each master creating arguably their best work in years, if not ever. Akira Kurosawa made Rashomon, Seven Samurai, and Throne of Blood. Yasujiro Ozu made Tokyo Story and Good Morning. Masaki Kobayashi made the Human Condition trilogy. Kenji Mizoguchi made Ugetsu and the Life of Ohiru. Ishiro Honda made Godzilla, whose film franchise still runs strong to this day. These directors and titles are only the surface of an iceberg full of artistic innovation and freedom. But why was the 50s in Japan so concentrated with great movies? What allowed these artists to reach their peak all around the same period?
The grand climax of 3.5 years of grueling fighting is reached as members of America's historic 7th Regiment of the 1st Cavalry Division enter Tokyo.
The story of Japanese cinema around World War II is full of tragedy and suppression. After the continual heavy loss of soldiers throughout 1945 and 2 atomic bombs dropped on the civilian cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan was given no choice but to surrender, something fundamentally opposed to their cultural understanding of war. For centuries, the understanding had been death before surrender. Yet Emperor Hirohito, a man who was seen as invincible by many of his subjects, signed a treaty of defeat rather than dying honorably in battle. This defeat, along with the effects of the atomic bomb, sent shockwaves throughout the country that couldn't be unshaken. The people of Japan had to reckon with their broken national identity and the harsh realities of their devastated country following the war. On top of this, military occupation by Allied forces continued long after the war, from 1945 all the way until 1952, and along with them came censorship of Japanese film. Every single director in the country had to first translate their film into English, then present their concept and script to military operatives for approval. Anything that was deemed nationalistic by the military board of censors was immediately rejected and had to be taken out of the film. Among the rejected items were katanas, Mount Fuji, and anything relating to the feudal past of Japan, meaning that period pieces set in the distant past were outlawed. Along with the banning of certain items and time periods, many period piece films from before the occupation were burned for being too taboo by the Allied military standards. This was a devastating loss for Japan's film history, as hundreds of films from the 1910s through the 1930s were lost. This occupation fragmented an already broken nation, and many of the directors working at the time stopped making films altogether because the imposed censorship was so rigid. The suppression led to a period of films that didn't reflect the culture they were made from at all. The censors encouraged American ideals of individualism and rejected any form of national identity Japan could form at a time when they desperately needed to form a new image for their country. However, the suppression wouldn't keep filmmakers down for too long. What many consider the beginning of Japan's golden age of cinema comes in 1951 with Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon. This film is unique in several ways, including one of the first instances of a single story told through multiple perspectives. But what makes it culturally significant for Japanese cinema as a whole was its festival run, appearing at the Venice Film Festival and winning a Golden Lion, the highest prize of the festival. This not only opened the eyes of international viewers to the quality of Japanese cinema, but also ushered in a new era of masters to thrive under new conditions of freedom after the occupation. Seeing Kurosawa's success with Rashomon, the studio system of Japan, much like the new Hollywood of the 1970s in America, prioritized director vision and quality. The studios knew how much Japanese audiences were craving moving theater experiences, so they allowed their directors to flourish under a new level of freedom, which led to magnum opus after magnum opus. Period films were allowed once again, leading to some of the greatest samurai films of all time. New Japanese genres were being created through films like Godzilla, whose filmography runs over 30 films. Along with this level of excellent artistic output, audience attendance rose rapidly, and new theaters were created all over the country to match this spike year after year. The studios, the directors, and the audiences as a whole shared a beautiful synergy that is unrivaled by many other periods. There was no cosmic reason or artistic movement to thank for such a golden age in Japan's cinematic history. The directors who comprised it were significant well before 1951 and after 1960, and shared no common vision for movie making as a whole. Many of them actually fundamentally disagreed. What we have to thank is the persistence of the artists and humans that comprised this time. While many gave up under the occupation and quit filmmaking, many kept going. A prime example being Yasujiro Ozu, who never sacrificed his cinematic style, even during the censorship. The Japanese as a whole may have been put through years of unparalleled grief during and following the war, but their persistence to redefine their national identity in a way that was meaningful to them is what allowed for such a period of prosperity in their films. The golden age of Japanese cinema is just a starting point in the canon of Japan's film history as a whole, but the impact of its artists and their work rings throughout every generation that followed.